So hello there, we've got the block pattern out ready, and we've already drawn round the small skirt here. This one is for an elasticated waist skirt. I also need a band. Oh, maybe I should start with what we're making. Okay, we are making a denim skirt that buttons at the front. I know, quite simple. We're going to put as much detail as we can in though. We're going to do the double seams that are sort of standard with denim. I'm using a lightweight stretch denim. This is easier to sew in some ways and harder in another. It's harder to do the double seams because it doesn't have that crisp fold, because this is very, very soft. But it's easier to sew because it's lightweight. So I've got my cloth folded here. Now I've folded it into a quarter so that it's got the seam on the inside, and I will need the back to go in one piece, but I will cut down the front, and then I need these slight darts at the top of the skirt. So let's put that down there. In fact, I could have got rid of the block pattern actually, made it a bit easier for myself. Now you can either pin this down. I'm using a weight. What can happen is you can start going in at an angle if you don't pin it. Or you can do a sort of mixture of both. You can either use a couple of pins and a weight. I know people that do all sorts of strange things. But all we quite have to do is cut round it. It's quite a simple shape, very simple shape in fact. And on this bit of paper I have worked out my hem allowance already. So all I need to do is just cut down this one side and then cut round the dart, which goes in slightly. And I've going to cut off the hemming of the cloth, you know, the seam thing. So lovely. Just need to go up the side. And best way to do that is, as I know it's a straight line, is do this, and then I can take off the flaky bits. So as you can see, it frays just like a normal denim, but it's going to be a lot softer, so easier to sew on the sewing machine. Easier for the sewing machine to sew. So untake that pin and that one, and the only difference is I need one of these to have a fold, a cut down the front, and this is for the opening and the buttons. So let's fold that straight. So that's easy enough. One of the things I also want to do is I want to put pockets in it. So I have my leftover bit of fabric, and I'm going to go for square pockets, and I'm going to do two at the back with the proper V. And I can use that as part of my seam allowance. So they're going to be quite small, but it's a matter of, I'm using the cloth that I've got, so. And if I go straight, and then I can just do another V there. So I'll match these up, but I'll put them to the side. And you also have pockets in the front. So these need to come down and then arch round. But I'm going to make use of this and use it as my guide, as my pattern for the front bit that replaces the pocket. So what I need to do is I need to cut round these, but with a generous hem allowance. So let's make sure I've got as much fabric as I possibly can, because I don't want to use the other larger bit, I want to save that for, well, something else. So there we go. I think I'm going to have to use the hem allowance, the ream seam, which is fine. Now again, you can pin it. It's probably best not to balance it in the air, but or cut it over a piece that you've already cut. But I'm going to make do. So I've got all my pieces now, and I've got rid of all the scrap pieces so that I know exactly where I am. There we go. We want these matching, don't we? Fold them over. Okay. So that's that. Now with a separate piece of cloth, I'm going to cut out some lining for the front pockets. Now I'm going to use those pieces as a pattern as well, and this can either be made of cotton or anything you have to hand. It won't be seen, so it will be fine. I'm going to actually use a piece of cotton, so I will... I should have got it out straight away, shouldn't I? There we go. I'm going to make them out of lining because that's to hand. And as we know, pockets are square. So let's just cut off the excess here. Put that out the way. So I am going to have 2 rectangles. And I am going to use this front pocket as my guide. So I need half of them to come down with the swoopy bit. Lovely, and I need both of them to come down with that arc. So I'm folding it back over again, and I'm going to put this angle right and then just do that. So what I'm left with is the swoopy bit where you put your hand in, and then the dart on both sides. So we will get back to that. I'm going to keep these safe for now, because when you're dealing with small bits, you don't want your waist to get caught up with your pattern bits, do you? And I can get rid of everything else. Okay, well, it's a simple matter of moving on to the sewing machine. So I'm going to hit pause, readjust the camera so you can see nicely, and get the sewing machine out. So welcome back. Okay, we're going to start with the pockets. Now, these are the back pockets, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch them with 1 layer of stitches, and then to get that double stitched effect, I'm going to stitch them with another row of stitches to stitch them onto the cloth. So it makes perfect sense to me. Of course I'm using pins because I want these to be as straight as possible. I'm using orange thread in the machine, and I have got the machine set up for standard cloth because it pretty much is. It's just that the design that we're sewing it is going to be on in a denim style. Now the way I'm doing these is I'm putting them round so that I can pull them towards me. Now you'll see pins being used to the side as well, and it literally is just preference and size of the thing we're sewing. So okay, so I've done it like that. I know I've got ears sticking up, but I can work on them when I'm on the sewing machine. And I'm going to start there because I want two lines at the top, so I'm going to come back to those. Lovely. And I'm going to be sewing quite far in so that when I sew it onto the pocket, I can sew it on the next line. So I'm going to keep my finger there and I'm going to tuck everything in. It hasn't got a lot to grip on at the moment, just because we're starting quite near the edge, so the actual teeth of the machine aren't gripping. Now it's quite important that I keep my corners nice and sharp, so I'm going to leave the needle down and then I'm going to continue sewing again. And I can take that pin out now, and I'm going to make sure I leave my finger where the pin was. Okay, I'm just going to adjust the material so that I start back on the place that I stopped from. This is just a matter of lining it up, but it was getting stuck, so because I'm not giving it enough room to actually sew. So when I'm coming up to a corner, sometimes it's a good idea just to lift the foot and then tuck it under, and then I'm going to lower my needle again. So not hugely exciting, but it would be wrong of me just to do it, because I think this is probably more interesting than the straight sewing. So I've removed the other pin and I've tucked my other corner in, and up it goes again, and I'm just going to make sure the fabric is lying flat, and then we can go up again. Push the needle down. Now I need to tuck in these corners again. Now if I was using full strength sort of canvasy denim, then a good idea would be to actually iron this all down, but because this is like stretch denim, it wouldn't iron flat anyway. It would just, you know, it wouldn't stay ironed, because it's easy wear stuff really. So I'm doing one line at the top. Now this time I am doing the line closer to the edge, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a line beneath that, so I've got the effect. Now it's a good idea to make sure your machine's set up so that you've got top stitch on both sides. I do this by keeping the thread quite loose. If the thread was tight, then it would be obvious which is the front seam and which is the back. Now the way I'm lining this up is I've got the line of previous stitches parallel to the foot, so that I've got a guide to keep it straight. Rather than using the guide on the sewing machine, I'm just using the previous line of stitches. So that's one pocket, and probably not as neat as I could do it, but that's how we're doing it, and I'll do the other one off screen. So I want to do the linings for these pockets. So I have the piece of fabric and the curb. This is why I was going to use cotton, but I didn't get any out, so I don't know. And I'm going to line these up together so that they're going to sit nice and flat. Yeah? So, and place it under the machine, and this is the right side out. We do a couple of reverse stitches. that'll be what my pocket will look like. And all I need to do is put this round so that it's done. This is the dart side. Now, as you can see, I'm going a lot more slowly when I'm sewing with the lining side down, because lining is a lot more slippy. So that's that done. Ooh. And it's all bunched up. Yeah, sometimes, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a knot coming from the thread. So, and that happens. I'm just going to see if I can pull that knot through, because I don't want to have to, yeah, they come on the roll, and you can moan as much as you like, but I don't think it's going to change the situation. But every now and again you'll just get a bad reel, which is a bit of a surprise, really. I must admit, if it's happened once on a reel, I expect it to happen again, and I've literally just thrown the whole lot away. So we're now back onto the main skirt body. This is the back, so we can keep that to hand. And I need the 2 front pocket seams, because we are going to give these a go. Now, as it's a converse curve, it is going to be slightly more tricky than if it was just a nice flat piece of fabric. And again, I'm going to do a seam on this side, and then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to do the double seam. So we're just coming up to the apex of the curve now, and then I'm going to push the cloth round from underneath so that I'm keeping a nice level sewing. Now, if you were just doing a normal fabric, it would be a good idea to do a top seam on this, because it would encourage it to all lie flat. And of course, I've buried my scissors again, because I'm an expert at burying scissors, hiding them from myself. So now when I line this up, I'm going to pick a point, which is the foot. I'm going to keep the foot that side of the seam, and you can see what I mean by it curling up. And I'm going to just do a couple of double stitches. This should be taken up by the seam allowance, so I'm not too worried, but I do want to keep it looking nice. Okay, and we're just coming around the curve again. And there's no way you can do this fast. See, but another knot. I don't like it. Alright, I'm going to have to find some different orange thread, which is a bit of a shame, but I will try and get that. So, should I just do this before I do that? So here we are. We now need to just sew that onto there. So with a couple of stitches, just so it's lined up ready, and then when we sew it onto the main body, then it's nice and easy. Okay, I'm going to have to switch you off. I'm going to have to sort this out. Alright, thank you. So, denim skirt with buttons. So, while I change the cotton, and I've matched it up as close as I can, I'm hoping that when I wash it, it will fade into the same colour. So that's my theory, but if I stop and go down the shop each time that I needed to, I'd never get anything done. So I've done the French seam on one side and I've got the pocket in, and that comes around like that. I know it looks a bit baggy at the minute, and I'm just starting on this side, but and now I've put pins in just to hold the pocket in safe. Now you have two choices really. You can either line it up like that and then trim this one, or you can just line it up like that. Now I've got, so you can line it up like that and then just trim this top one, or you can line it up like that and then just fold it over. Now I'm going for the simpler of the two, but it's really what you're happy with. And all I'm doing now is I'm sewing a line of stitches, and I'm using this foot again as my guideline. So I'm just literally going to start on going over the pocket. So this bit is a bit more tricky because of the pockets are in it, and I'm going to get rid of that pin now because I don't need it. It was just holding the pocket in place. So it's not too happy about going over the pocket, but that's fine. So now what we need to do is make sure that we've got a straight line just coming down here, and it does require trimming. You know, these bits will need to be trimmed because they've gone all flaky on us, but this is the nature of the beast. So I'm making sure all the time that I'm not pulling this, there's not too much weight to pull it out of the way, and that I'm keeping this line straight. And there we go, just coming up to the end now. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because I want my folds to go round, because the back is now slightly bigger than the front because we're going to put the buttons on it. But it's one of those things, you can spend too long worrying about which way your seams are going to face. So that's that done, quite simple. Just release that. And I need to just make sure that this is all, are we in shot? Yes. This is my first time with my camera there, so I'm not 100% sure how it works. I'm not sure if every time I go to sew I'm getting my head in shot. So, but just give it a little trim just to keep it all tidy. The straighter these lines are and straighter the cut it is, the easier it'll be. And definitely if you have any flaky bits like this, then these are just going to make your life a little bit harder. So that's all good, and I don't need the pins now because this is going to hold it still. So I have a terrible feeling. How unprofessional of me. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I've changed my bobbin. I'm really sorry about that. I normally keep a spare one up there, but because I changed my thread I didn't think. So what we've got here is I've laid this flat. This is my pocket and this is the front of the garment, and we fold this over and then we sew along here. Now it's entirely up to you. You can put several hundred pins in this if you like to. I'm not, because I'm a rebel. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I line it up well with my feet. I'm going to sew nice and slowly, and this is the reason I'm using the Singer today rather than any other machine, because it's a value model, or I don't know if it's the reason behind it, but it goes a bit slower, so fighting chance. Okay, so I just get it going, and I want some reverse stitches in there, and then what I have to make sure I do is that I don't start sewing without the bits tucked in. And when I get towards the bottom, then the fabric will come together, so I have to make sure I swish it out as well. So every couple of inches, get that over there, and then I'm literally just folding, pulling and sewing and making sure So this line here that I'm following is the back of the stitches from when I sewed it together. And then literally all I'm doing is a top seam. Now if you were to buy a pair of jeans, then the machine, they have a specialist machine that sort of inks them like that, and very, very fast, I'm sure. But this is how we've got to do it to cheat. So yeah, it's just coming off there. It's quite important to keep this straight, and you can see now why I was a bit obsessed about the flaky bits, because they'd all be sticking out as well. Now you can see the way that the cloth naturally lies. There's a couple of things we can do. We can use our trusty weights just to hold the fabric aloft, but it really is a matter of concentrating. And sometimes if I'm doing a really long line of this, then what I will do is I will stop halfway and I will start from the other end, just to make life a little bit easier for myself. I knew that was going to happen. But you can see the logic of it, even if you end up dropping a pair of pinking shears on your toes. So just getting it straight for another couple of inches. And because these stitches are so visible, you can see why I said that it's best to be straight when you start off. So lovely. Just going to ram it in there. There's nothing else I can do for it. Lovely. Might as well reverse stitch, although I do know that the bottoms of these skirts are not matching up. And I'm sure it's just because I didn't do the pockets very well. So what I need to do is, I can see there I didn't join it very well, so I'm going to get that straight, and then I'm going to sew the bottom. So now all I'm going to do is a quick roll over seam, and of course I'm going to go over it twice, just so that I've got the continuation of this, and that's what I'll be doing on the waistband as well. So I'm already aware that this tape is quite a long one, really, for something as simple as a denim skirt. But I don't want you to come away and not think that you know exactly everything I've said, because that would be even more annoying. Lovely, that'll do. So a simple fold and a simple fold again, and then I'm going to sew right on the edge of this seam, and I'm going to keep my stitches quite loose so that I have got the back stitches looking as if they are... I'm not having the best of luck today. It is a Monday, so please be aware of that. That normally I have a lot more energy, but obviously not on a Monday, because I normally do my videos on a Tuesday or a Saturday. So I'm home from work early, I'll get one done. It's fine, I'll be fine. And I can never thread a needle on the video, for whatever reason. Lovely. Okay, let's get this started, and then you can then I'll probably finish it off camera so that it's done. So yes, very simple, using the line of my foot again, rolling it with my fingers and hitting the go pedal. Obviously, if you've got a machine that you can control to go slowly, my other favourite machine has got one speed, and that's really quite fast. It doesn't seem to like going slowly at all. So, but this one's got quite a gradual start up. Now, another thing that's important to do is not get this caught up because it's annoying. So I've got quite a lot of tension on this, just to keep it all straight. And when I go over the seam, what I'm going to do is, if it doesn't appear to be going over naturally, then I'm going to lift my foot and just get it up and over. Okay, well, I'm going to finish this seam and then I'm going to start the next one, and I'll catch you at the end of the second seam. So we've still got loads to do. So, yeah, I'm actually just running along the top seam of the waistband. Now, I'm not going to stick a waistband on this because I don't think I need to, but I just wanted to show you how to deal with the pockets. So we're coming along with our rolly bit. Now this bit needs to be there with this side. So we're going to sew up a bit closer. I'm just coming over another seam, so I may need to lift my foot and just push it under. And then I'm coming through. Can you see my back there? I'm a bit tough from behind because it's obviously sticking. Now I need this to match up, and then I can continue rolling. Now you can do this with pins, so we need the lining on the outside, and then we can roll that through as well. So, because you don't want to see any of the lining, it should just be continuous denim. So all I've done is force that under there. I've got it quite firmly under that finger. I don't know if you can see the white knuckle. And then it's going over the seam. So I'm going to continue pushing just to get it over the seam, because it's got a few levels of cloth. I'm not going to push it enough to actually bend the needle. And then it's a matter of just rolling it again. So, there we go. You can always give it a turn with my hand. Lovely. Make sure it's all straight. And there we go. Still lining up using that prong of the foot. So this will be as much a surprise for me as it is you. Let's turn it over and have a little look. So we've got the seam there, but we haven't got any of that lining showing. So that's great. Now the second part of these seams, these double seams, is now we've done them, this one's the bottom one, we literally just turn it over and sew in parallel with our original stitches. We make use of the sewing machine as a kind of iron, because this is twisted slightly, and it will stop it from curving up. So I've got it halfway through that this time because I've got less room, and I'm just going to remain along that line. So now we could use 2 needles. You can get like a double needle, and I will show you on a different project. The reason I'm not doing it on this is because I'm using it as a top seam to stop it from curling. We saw it quite dramatically in the pocket. Now this machine wouldn't do double seams, so yeah, no, just ignore all that. It's all relevant. Yeah, you can try it with a double needle if you want to. I don't believe it would work because the way we're doing it this way, although time consuming, we're doing it for a purpose, not just strength and decoration. Okay, so I've got a few more seams to do. I'm going to hit pause again, and then we can work on the buttons for the side. So I am now double seamed 3 lengths of the way, And all I've got left is this one now. We get to sew on the sew where we normally sew here. So we are wrong side to wrong side, and then we're going to fold it over, and then we're going to make a nice little hemi bag. So that's not right, is it? Yeah, so I need it still right side out, and this one I need to then fold over, so we've got a nice, like we would a waistband, and then I can sew my buttons holes on it. So let's get that done. So we've got the right side down, and we've got the right side down again. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to do a line. I'm going to leave a bit over, because we did this, this was the first piece of cutting we did, so, and we know we've done it slightly bigger. Now I must admit, if you're not confident doing over stitches that you can see, by the end of this project you really will be, because of it you just have so many to do. And they will be less physical. As soon as we wash this, there will be like a dye running thing going on. So I'm not going to trim the edges just yet, because I'm going to tuck them in. Now I'm going to fold this over, and then I'm going to do another one of those seams. But this time it's going to be slightly more difficult, because whereas before I was just holding it tight. So yes, if you were going to use pins for one of them, then this would be the one to use it for. So on our machine we're going to ensure that we've got the stitches covered from last time, and we're going to have to make a new line to keep this all level. Now we can do that quite easily with a piece of tape. I have random assorted tapes in here, or a post-it note or something. Nothing that we can damage the machine with, but something so that we've got a nice marker, a nice clean marker. So, in fact, a post-it note is ideal. Top tip when you're sewing, don't shut your cloth into the drawer, because you will lose it. So there we go. I can feel this with my fingers from behind, so that I can line it up, and then all I'm going to do is sew. Now I think once I've done the buttons as well, this will be too busy if I use another lot of stitches, so I'm not going to double sew this one. But I suppose what I should do is I should do the buttonholes, and then I should have a little look-see if it looks right or if it looks wrong. So just veering there, don't know why. Now I can feel that the machine is literally going over these stitches, so it's none too happy. There we go, line it all up again. Now if you were to put a waistband on this skirt, the placement of the buttons should be one for the waistband and then one quite close to the top, so you don't get a gathering. This is the main reason I didn't put a waistband on it. So lovely. So there we are. Just ask that to be removed, and then we'll check to see that our stitches seam level. So that's great. Now the buttonholes themselves will hold it flat. Now if you've not done buttonholes on a machine before, I severely recommend that you practice on a spare piece of cloth. I really do. So we've decided that we want one at the top, and that's good enough for me. We've got a selection of brass buttons, they would be ideal, or you could do alternate buttons of pretty colours, or you could use the same buttons, or you could use a rivet gun thing, which I haven't got. so we're not using that. Okay, quite simple, and you can see that on the camera. I've just moved it to the buttonhole button. I am just moving it to the buttonhole number 1 because it's start number 1. And in my lovely mucky drawer, I might have a buttonhole foot to show you. Oh, I do. There you go. You can use your specialist foot if you want to. If you don't have one, that's fine. So we need to decide what size we're going to make. The start of it is definitely the same. We need to cap a couple at the top. So we need to cap a couple at the top. So all I'm doing is I'm doing the ends there. And then I'm going to move to number 1. And I'm going to go along. I'm going to let the machine take it. I'm not going to force it. And then I need to cap again. So it's back down to that. I did have a lot of trouble with this machine and going backwards, so I might change machines, but you'll be the first to know. So it's sewing quite well. I just keep an eye on it, and when I'll hear the pitch change as well of when I get to the end. So that is one buttonhole done, and then I have to just keep on going down. Now what I'm going to do, I don't know if this is right or not, is I'm going to make the buttonholes, and then I'm going to cut the buttonholes, and then I'm going to mark the underside of the cloth, because I'm not very good at measuring and doing it the other way. So now I'm just back on one, so I'm going forward. I don't know if you'd see better if I put my foot on. And just cap it off, and now I'm going backwards on 3. So all you've got to remember is to relax and let it do it. So let's do one with the foot. And while the camera's on, I am so I've left it with quite a big hole. You can see that, can't you? But I just want to show you how to cut a buttonhole if I can. Okay, I'm going to come back to that. Oh no, I've got one here. So, in this little room, there are not hundreds of these. I know there's at least 4 of those stitch pickers. So, I'm putting a pin in there, and I'm putting my stitch picker at the far end of there, and I'm just pulling through. I didn't mean to go quite that fast, but that's how you do it. So let's do another one. So you can see why you have to use the pin, because that was no pressure at all. Very gently insert it, and then turn it upwards, and it just rips everything. So there we are. But if the pin's not there, then it literally carries on till you've, well, I don't know, shut it out the window. So I'm lining it up by eye again, and then I'm putting my specialist foot down. Now I am moving my machine to do the cap stitch at the end, and I'm still on the buttonhole there. Let's go. Oh yeah, you can see it loads better, can't you? And then I'm just moving it to 1. Now I'm not holding the fabric back or anything, and I am then going to do another cap, and I'm going to go backwards. Yeah, it works, doesn't it? Now if I was to do, say, a Pacific button, don't know. Okay, some of the posh ones have got a button measure at the back, so they make the right size hole, but I haven't. So I'm going to switch you off. I'm going to finish my buttonholes and choose my buttons. So welcome back. I finished my buttonholes and I finished sewing on most of my buttons. I've left one off. And I have re-sewn my pockets because what on earth was I thinking? So they're big enough to actually put something in there. And I've sewn one pocket on. Another job I have to do is I have to finish off this end of the button seams, and I have to line one pocket. So let's get on anyway, because we've got quite a few little jobs to do, but I do think they're important. Now, I think it's quite important to get these measured up equally. I think it would be one of those things that you'll always be aware of it, and that you'll always feel a bit silly if you know that your pockets don't line up. Because we're actually, you know, this is more than just a project. This is a garment to wear, isn't it? So lovely. I am just going to put a couple of pins in. I'm not putting them over the line of thread or anything. I'm just putting them sort of there, and then I am going to push everything to the side because I'm going to sweep it off the table in a moment. Now when you're sewing anything flat, what I mean flat is it's on the sewing machine flat, then it's a good idea to make sure you can get it as straight as possible. So of course I'm going to do a couple of reverse stitches just to start, and then I'm going to use my foot as a line. I might actually put the needle in the middle. So then it's just a matter of lining it up with the previous line of stitches. Now the previous line of stitches are to hold the seams in, and then I'm going to swing it round. Good idea to leave the needle down, so that you've got nice sharp points on your sew. Maybe one more stitch, there we are. And this is where I push everything on the floor that I'm going to need for the later stage. So, it's just having a bit of trouble going over the seam here. Lift up that foot and push everything right. Okay. Oh, this video is so long, literally, because I keep making silly mistakes. No, that's not orange. Okay, so it's a matter of pausing and refilling the bobbin again. I thought I'd probably get away with doing it once because, well, it's... So welcome back. Now I'm literally just sewing along here. So that's one pocket on. Lovely. So next job I think is to show you how I lined up the buttonholes. Now I'm going to lie this flat, and then I'm going to take the other part of the skirt and hold it over the top, and then I'm going to get a chalk pencil, so one of these things, and just line, and then sew my buttons on. So I've still got a line there, probably drawing on the back there. Okay, so we need a button sewn on there. Now, I have not got 12 buttons that are identical, and that's not the look I wanted for this skirt. So I am just going to sew on. They're like, well, they're not even alternate, but they're kind of similar. And I'm just pulling the thread through one stitch just to keep it in place. And then pop it through the back there. Now, if you were to do this skirt, I would recommend that you choose your buttons quite early on so that you can get your buttonholes the right size. It's just going to make life a lot easier for you. Oh, it's a necessity, it really is. So, but obviously, because I knew I had so many, I could get away with it. Alright, then I just do a little knot in the back there to hold it secure and keep it tidy. Now, I know that this thread will darken when I wash it because the indigo will run on the fabric. But there's a lot to be said for it, for using a darker thread, especially for jobs like that. Now, the other job I need to do is this is just the piece of fabric that we sewed on. So I'm going to push it down so that I can just run a hem on it. Now, I did say that I was going to think about maybe doing 2 stitches along this line. I don't think I am. I think it might benefit from a line of stitches along that line. So I'm going to get it in position, and when I'm happy with it, I'm going to put a pin in it. So now I've put the pin in it that way so I can start sewing, and then I can pull the pin out as I'm sewing. So let's get this lined up in the machine. Now, it's quite a few layers of fabric, so the machine's going to be uncomfortable, but it should be fine. If it was difficult, then I would get some blue thread and then I would just hand sew this. And if I didn't have a buttonhole sew here as well, I would hand sew the buttonholes. And I don't think it would look any less for it. Lovely, so if there is any little floofy bits sticking out, then I would pick them with a pin and do a hand sew. So the most important job is to get the lining in this pocket in. Now, the first one I put in before I sewed it, and I don't believe it lied flat. So now we have a piece of lining here, and we need it to be sewn along here. So if I pick up the material of the flap and then just run some stitches along there, that will be fine. So that's the back of the pocket done. And then when the garment's finished, that will lie unseen. But to get it on this side, what I should have done is sew it when I sewed it. So what I am now going to do is I'm going to just hand sew it on there, because of the other one doesn't look very good. So yeah, so I've got that to do, and I've got my threads to do, and then I have a finished garment. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope I hope it's encouraged you to go and sew. That's my main goal. I am Fiona. I do 3 videos on Tuesday and I do 1 at the weekend. And I hope to catch you again on the web, and thank you so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, please find us on Facebook, and hopefully I'll see you again. Thank you ever so much. So hello there. Now we have a finished garment. I know, how nice is that? Well, thank you ever so much for watching.